Okay, good morning. This is Richard Shu, host of Shu Untied, and this morning I'm extremely thrilled and pleased to have as my guest the voice of Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch, Carol Spinney, who is also the subject of a fantastic documentary called I Am Big Bird. Carol, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Carol, let's see. So, I guess to begin with, so that so that my listeners know that this is indeed a Big Bird. Can you say something in Big Bird's voice and Oscar the Grouch?
Sure. Here I am. I'm sitting at home, and it's sunny this morning. First time it's been sunny in about 5 days. We live in Connecticut.
That's great. And how about Oscar the Grouch?
Yeah, I'm right here. Who is this?
Well, that definitely sounded like Oscar the Grouch. So tell me, Carol, how did you get to play such iconic characters in your career?
Well, I've been a puppeteer since I was 8 years old. I was fascinated. I grew up in the 30s and 40s and into the 50s when I went to college and school. And I put myself, my father didn't think much of education, and he wouldn't pay for anything, college or anything. So I put myself through art school, doing puppet shows and things like that. So I finally got, I worked for years on television in Boston on the Bozo Big Top show. But finally I decided it was so much fun, it wasn't real work. And I decided I wanted to do something more important than like education for children. And so I went out to a puppet festival, and Jim Henson was there looking for somebody to play Big Bird and Oscar.
Huh.
And so my show was a disaster. Everything went wrong with it, and I was sure that I didn't get anything good out of this thing. So after packing my puppets back into the car and ready for the long trip way back from New Sesame, no, we were at Salt Lake City, and I hear a voice behind me. So I liked what you were trying to do. I turn around, it was Jim Henson. And he said, I'm going to work on a new show, which we haven't made yet, and but would you like to work on it? And of course, I'm thrilled working with the Muppets.
So was the Big Bird character already been created by Jim at that time, or did he create the character for you?
He said, well, he owned it, but I didn't. It hasn't been built yet. So they built a puppet around me. They had never built a Big Bird before.
Huh.
And didn't know how to put the feathers on properly. It was pretty messy looking. And the guy, Kermit Love, not the frog, the human, he was building it, and he kept adding feathers and putting them on better, and gradually Big Bird began to start to look pretty good. All this was while we were actually on the air.
Huh. And what did you think about the character when you first started? Did you love him from the beginning, or did you find it difficult to do this Big Bird where you had to use your arm to do the mouth and all that, or did you kind of liked it right from the beginning?
Well, I liked it, especially since I was working with Jim himself and Frank Oz, his partner. But it was he wanted Big Bird to be a goofy guy, a really silly, goofy bird. I decided to make him a child, not a goofy guy, and the character really grew with that because he was a surrogate bird on the show.
So how would you describe Big Bird's personality? What would you say about that?
Well, he's kind of innocent and very, very anxious to help and be useful, and he was very complex character, whereas some characters only like cookies or one single things. Grover was kind of thought he was very super, but he wasn't, and things like that. But with Big Bird, he was a child who had his problems, his hopes, desires. Very complex character.
Did you feel like you were actually like Big Bird? I mean, did you feel like you really stepped into the role and was Big Bird and in the persona.
I did.
Yeah, interesting.
I was. It was fun to play him, and we did 2 shows a day.
So when did you start playing Oscar the Grouch? Was that also from the beginning, or was that later on?
That was from the same beginning.
Huh.
It was November 20th, 1969. We went on the air.
Huh.
And Oscar, so they both got, the characters both became much more complex as we learned who they were, and the writers would be consistent in making them, Oscar being very irritable and grouchy, and but not mean. I didn't want him to be mean or cruel. It's just grouchy.
So when you kind of look back, I mean, what are your favorite moments of playing Big Bird and Oscar?
Well, I think some of it is working with very well-to-do, well-known people. For instance, the first celebrity I worked with was Pete Seeger, and he was wonderful. So getting to work with famous people that I admired was great, and also the pay eventually got to be better. And I finally met a girl on set that was so nice that we've been married for 46 years.
Well, that sounds good.
Years.
That sounds good. Are you still playing Big Bird now?
Yes.
And Oscar?
Yeah, I've had some physical setbacks, so I only do the voices now.
Big Bird did a lot of singing. Did you enjoy doing the singing for Big Bird?
Yeah. When I got the job, I had no idea I was going to be singing, but fortunately, I can hold a pitch, and so I had very understanding directors of the music, so I got to do it quite well, and I've got some gold records and 2 Grammys for singing.
What is Big Bird's most famous song, would you say?
Probably At Kadefki Jekyll Monochros Suvices. That's alphabet. If you look at the letters all in a row, A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Can you sing a little bit of that still?
Sure. At Kadefki Jekyll Monochros Suvices. It's the most remarkable word I've ever seen. At Kadefki Jekyll Monochros Suvices. I wish I knew exactly what I mean. It starts out like an A word, as anyone can see, but somewhere in the middle it gets awful queer to be QRST. Like that.
That's cute. Tell me a little bit about, because obviously I watched Sesame Street as a kid. Tell me a little bit about the relationship between Big Bird and Snuffleupagus and his imaginary friend. Was that something you came up with, or?
No, that Jim Henson and John Stone, who helped create the show, came up with that. Jim has always wanted to make a 2-person Muppet. There's a person in front doing most of the work, and one in the back doing the hind legs. And Snuffleupagus was introduced in the beginning of the 3rd year.
Did it seem weird that you played such a famous character that everybody in the whole world knew, but nobody knew you played Big Bird? Like, was that kind of weird? Like, you'd walk around the streets and no one would know that you were Big Bird, or did people know that you were Big Bird?
No, very few people knew I was. I'd meet people and they said, "What do you do?" "Well, I work on Sesame Street." "Oh, that's a great show. What do you do on it?" I say, "Big Bird and Oscar." "Oh my God!" So I'm very unknown. Through the years, I get known in certain little circles, but it doesn't get very well known.
Yeah. But but now that the documentary is made, a lot more people know, I take it.
Well, the movie was very successful, a nice movie, but it's not monstrously huge, so most people still don't know who I am.
So would you say you really enjoyed playing Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch? And when you I know you're still doing it now, but when you look back, you've been doing it all these years. Is that something you just really loved and enjoyed?
Yeah, I can't even believe I got such a great job. One of the questions you kind of asked before, which one do I rather do?
Yeah.
I get asked that a lot. And I don't know. It's so much fun to play Oscar because he's cool.
Huh.
Guys usually say, well, Big Bird is kind of more for little children. but Oscar is so cool. He's the coolest dude on television, and that's kind of fun. So I have fun, even though the job is very different. But I know them each very well. So I've been doing them now for, like I said, 47 years, and it's just so fun to play these characters.
Yeah, I'll bet. Did they ever think about spinning off and making Big Bird its own show or anything like that? Was that ever?
No, I don't think so.
Huh.
I even thought he could easily carry a show.
Yeah.
But they weren't interested. They didn't want to lose him off Sesame Street.
Huh.
Now, Elmo is by. The hardest part was starting in the early 80s. Elmo was introduced to the show, and Kevin Clash was such a wonderful puppeteer.
Huh.
He really made a wonderful character. Then it was Elmo took over, so I had to get used to the fact I wasn't going to be the number one character on the show.
Interesting. Who are some of the more famous or interesting celebrities that you've met on Sesame Street?
Well, my favorite of all, I made a movie, Follow That Bird, and Big Bird gets adopted into a bird family, but they were dodos, and they couldn't accept the fact he'd have a friend like Snuffleupagus. They thought that he should have only bird friends. And so Big Bird tries to run away and get back home again. And that was a fun movie to make.
How did you figure out the voice for Big Bird? Like, did it take a long time to kind of figure out the exact voice that you wanted to use for Big Bird, or did you just figure that out right away?
Oh, it's pretty much my own voice.
Huh.
My own voice is deeper, but it's pretty well my voice. I just speak. If I say, "Hello there, Richard." Hello there, Richard. I'm speaking higher, and it comes out sounds kind of cute, but I never do anything to try to be cute with it.
Huh. So it's not tiring for you to talk like Big Bird. You can do that for a long time. Yeah,
and even Oscar, who has a rough voice, like I talk like this, and but even his voice doesn't irritate me, even if I have a sore throat.
Huh.
And it's cold.
And it's not hard for you to switch back and forth between Oscar and Big Bird. You can do that easily.
No, I can do it instantly.
Huh.
Let me talk this way. Oh, I want to talk. Hey, turkey. Don't call me a turkey.
Do you ever go to a restaurant and turn on the Big Bird or Oscar the Grouch voice and see if people recognize it?
Yeah, and people get to know that I am working as those characters. And so I usually say, "Hello, what's for lunch?"
And people recognize that instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly babies, because babies are very kin to voices. That way they know their mother's voice.
Oh, right.
Dad's voice.
Huh. Well, Carol, it's been a really fascinating conversation. Obviously, I watched Sesame Street as a kid. It's such a thrill to talk to the voice of Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch, and I'm so glad that you're still doing it. And I would love to check in with you in a little bit and see if you're still doing Big Bird.
I'd be happy to talk to you, Richard. Thank you very much. Have a rotten day. Bye-bye. Sunny day, sweeping the clouds away.
This is Richard Shue and Carol Spinney. Thanks.
Sunny day, sweeping the